I'm excited to talk with Chelsea Lenker. She is someone in our community who's always doing the heavy lifting, especially for the teens in our community, the teens who often are forgotten. And she makes sure that their needs are provided the best she can with the help of our community. She is the founder and coordinator of Stuff-a-Sackpack. I almost never get that right. Thanks for being with us, Chelsea.
Thank you for having me, Lisa. It's great to be back.
Yeah, we've had you on the show in the studio a couple of times. Every year I want to make sure that we're able to help support you the best we can, because this need doesn't go away. And the needs have changed most definitely through what we're going through with COVID and the pandemic. So for people who aren't familiar with Stuff-a-Sackpack, please introduce yourself and your organization that you founded. How long ago?
This will be our 7th outreach year, and we are, it's a holiday outreach for local teen students in the Wenatchee and Eastmont School District who are categorically homeless, high risk, or in a season of need. And our goal is to encourage them during the holidays, to let them know they haven't been forgotten about by their community, and also to just meet tangible needs as much as we can, emergency needs and so forth.
That's the conversation right now is, you know, it's always a need. The kids are in need of knowing they're thought about, that we know they're out there, they need our help. Who are those students and teens that you're helping? Define for us, because some people don't understand homeless doesn't necessarily mean you're on the street.
Right, exactly. We use the federal designation that the schools use for homelessness, which is the McKinney Act. And it's a broader definition of homelessness. It can include students who are doubled up with another family, who are living with another family member, couch surfing, unaccompanied, which means they're not living with either parent. Some families are living in a hotel. So it's a broad definition of homelessness, but the teens that we are reaching out to through Stuff-a-Sackpack are definitely the ones that are the most marginalized in the school district. You know, when we say high risk, we could be talking about financial high risk to not come to school if the family doesn't have access to food. We could be talking about socially or emotionally or mentally high risk, which certainly is a huge concern and a priority for us to encourage against this year. And then high need, which means that the family or the student circumstances could just be unprecedented and different this year. For example, in the past, we've had students who were high need. A parent had cancer, wasn't able to work, and that student had a wide range of needs. So we're really going to the most marginalized teens that are in the schools. And certainly in 2020, it's unprecedented for all of us. We have had many obstacles for Stuff-a-Sackpack, and we're so excited that we're able to just do something this year. And so it looks different, but you know, we're committed to flexibility and we're going to make it happen.
How does it look different compared to last year in terms of the sacks themselves or the needs you're meeting?
Well, the sack packs we're going to use the same format. We're going to ask our community to sign up to Stuff-a-Sackpacks with a combination of practical items, gloves, scarves, fun things, gift cards, and edible snacks. So we're still doing everything we've done in the past with that card of encouragement. But this year, our biggest challenge is that the kids aren't in school. And so we've been able to collaborate with our 5 partner schools so that they can come up with a plan to distribute the sack packs for the students that they're choosing who need them the most. And something else we're doing that's different this year is we are actually in our drop-offs and our turn-ins of all donations a week earlier, so that our partner schools have 2 weeks instead of 1 to connect with those students in a way that's efficient and also safe in light of COVID-19. So, you know, we had to do some shuffling and be flexible, but we know that the teens that we are serving were already isolated to begin with. And so certainly they're more isolated than ever this year, especially emotionally. And so the risk factor for those students is even higher. So we're really focusing on encouragement this year. You know, we're going to be asking people to put things like stress balls in the sack pack. We're promoting even more cards of encouragement. We want these kids to know that they matter, and to get as much positivity and encouragement through their SACPAC as possible.
Well, in closing, please tell the people who are watching how they can support your efforts and how they go about it.
Perfect. So we have a website. It's www.stuffasackpack.com, and you can get all the information about our program and sign up there. We also have a fiscal sponsorship this year with the Community Foundation of North Central Washington, and there will be an online donate button on our website. And we just ask that everybody get their donations in by November 23rd so that we can utilize those resources to the max for these kids when we turn everything over to the schools on December 7th. So yeah, we're just delighted. I also want to give a shout out to Domino's Pizza. This is their 5th year supporting us, and they've generously already agreed to put a free pizza into the first 500 sack packs we do. So we have a great community, great support, and it's just a lot of amazing people from all backgrounds working together to love these kids and let them know that they matter.
And also shout out to Community Foundation. When you and I were in contact a couple of months ago, whenever anyone asks me a question like, where do I begin? Community Foundation is where you begin. And sometimes they can help and sometimes they can't, but they'll know where to point you. So I'm glad it worked out.
Well, and I want to say thank you to you for pointing me to the Community Foundation, because that referral came from you, and we're just so delighted to be able to have that resource available. And again, that's available for businesses and corporations that would like to financially contribute. And so again, if you can donate by November 23rd, that's going to really impact our ability to do this project to the best of our ability. So thank you so much, Lisa.
Yes, thank you. Anytime. I mean, I hopefully can point in the right direction. I don't have all the answers, but for sure, Community Foundation was a good place to start. I'm glad it worked out. So thanks again for being here. We will make sure the website shows up with your beautiful face throughout this interview and let people know how they can be of more help. Thank you for being here, Matt. I'm so excited to finally meet you.
Yeah, sure. I'm excited to be here.
Where exactly are you?
Currently, I'm in Hendersonville, North Carolina.
And you're working there?
Yeah, I'm painting a mural on the Hands-On Children's Museum right in the heart of downtown.
But take us back to the beginning of this project and this idea. We talked about it, or you talked about it a little bit in the video, but a lot of people would see a dying bee and toss it in the trash. What is it about you that made you feel compelled to spend those last moments with it?
Yeah, it's funny. I just did my first TEDx talk, which was quite the harrowing
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. But I talked actually in that a lot about my life leading up to that moment with the bee, when most of the storytelling throughout this project has been from that point with the bee forward. And I did realize there was a lot I was doing in my life before I met that bee to prepare me to be open enough to receive whatever message she was bringing me, and it really was the curiosity that was sparked in that moment on the floor with her. Like I just, for whatever, reason in that moment, I was open enough to say, what is this? What's in front of me? And I really felt a different creature in front of me than anything I had experienced up in my first 38 years of life. And bees have been around me since I was a little kid, and yet it was a completely different creature in that moment. And there was a cuteness and a beauty that I noticed that I had never seen before in this. And that just launched me on a curiosity journey through the internet and discovering behaviors that blew my mind. And then the colony collapse disorder that was going on with them was this huge global mystery in 2008. And I was like, how is this giant, globally devastating thing happening? And I'm in the middle of Manhattan and I've seen no articles about it, nothing. And that got me even more curious. And the story sort of unfolds from there.
When you think back to that time, we all are faced with opportunity that lend to our purpose. So how did it go from I'm curious about this bee and I'm fascinated by what's happening. How can I help? And you thought of, obviously you were a talented painter already, and you thought that, was that the first thought you had? I'm going to paint murals all over the world. What was the first thought you had?
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah, the first, I didn't even have a first thought other than walking around Manhattan, and there was a behavior of the honeybee that fascinated me, that it's called altruistic self-removal from the hive. And it's when a bee feels sick, it will exit the hive and fly off into the abyss for the good of the hive. That's where the name of my organization came from 7 years later. They do this because they're hardwired to understand their immune system as collective. They know in every fiber of their being that their health is based on the health of their hive, not just their individual self. And this was years before a pandemic would teach us all of this. And I'm on the subway going, we're a lot more connected than I thought with these people all around me. And I was just musing on that as I was doing my other projects. I've been a commissioned mural painter for 28 years now. So I really wanted to do one mural to raise some awareness. That was in my mind, but I wasn't working to manifest that. And a friend of mine, I was just talking to everybody about bees. Like, do you know how cool these creatures are? Do you know what's going on with them? I was just sort of got obsessed.
The guy,
like,
dinner parties and
yeah, I just was like fascinated. And I just wanted, that when you're that curious and fascinated by something, you want to share about it. And so I just kept telling people about them. And a friend of mine sent me a video of just a little clip of the side of a honey company in Florida and said, you should paint bees on this building. It was a 5th generation beekeeping family. And I just called them up and asked them, because I was like, I had been saying I wanted to do one mural to raise some awareness about like what was going on. They told me a few things. They said, we would love a mural on our wall. We have no money to pay you. Our town has no money, and murals are illegal in this city. So
those aren't any barriers to get.
right. I was like, no problem. But I basically told them I'm getting way too old to run from the police, and I paint way too slowly. And so they'll totally catch me. So if you guys get the law changed, I'll figure out a way to fund this. And I just sort of almost said it kind of flippantly, like figuring they were never going to call me back. We had a nice conversation, hung up, and 2 months later they called me up and said, we got the law changed. When are you coming? And so I had moved to Asheville, North Carolina at that point.
From
And
Manhattan.
from Manhattan, yeah. And I put up a web page, called it The Good of the Hive. It wasn't a crowdfunding or anything. It was just going to be one little project. And I got some donations from like friends and clients and family. And off I went with like $500 in my pocket, basically gas money, And when I got there, I tell this story all the time, but it's pretty powerful. The people, somebody put me up in their RV for free for 10 weeks. The restaurants in town started giving me free food, free salad bar. Coffee shop wouldn't let me pay for a cup of coffee. Beekeepers started donating like a jar of honey that I could sell to somebody else to raise money for the project. And somebody wrote a little article, did an interview, and all of a sudden it hit Facebook or something. I'm not even sure if it was Facebook, but it went out there, and people started donating money from all over the country in this town that had no money to do a project on this scale, because it was 10 weeks long. It was like, wasn't taking a vacation. That's a chunk of my year and livelihood. And I believe in.
And it's hard work.
It's hard work. It was 90 degrees every day.
Yes, or you're freezing cold.
Yeah.
Whichever, you're on a scaffold. It's hard work.
Yeah, and so it ended up getting fully funded, and it was on that project that they made the mural site a water stop on a ride going across Florida for hungry kids, raise money. And somebody came up to me, one of the producers on that ride. He had a honeybee on his shoulder, and he was like, this bee's telling me to come and talk to you. And I was like, really, what's the bee saying? And we got into a conversation, and he just asked me how many bees were in a healthy hive. And I had just learned like 30 to 60,000. So I told him that, and he said, do you think you could paint 50,000 of them? And there was like 16 bees in the first mural. It wasn't like I was well on my way or anything. And so, but it hit me. It was like that second lightning bolt moment with like, you know, that moment with the bee, connecting to that moment. And I was getting more and more fascinated by them, learning from beekeepers and actually being with some of the bees on that job site because they had hives there. And I just thought, you know, I'm going to see if I can do it. And that was 5,500 bees ago, 5 years, and or a little over 5 years now. And I painted from Florida to Lyons, Nebraska, Southern California, Manhattan. I just got back from England. I painted my first international mural last month, and it's picking up from there. Yeah.
So let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We're talking with Matt Willey. The website is The Good of the Hive. We'll be back in just a second. We're back talking with Matt Willey. The website is The Good of the Hive, and the cause is so tremendous. We can't get it done in one segment, so we're chatting again for a little bit. Thanks again for being here, Matt. You are in, you're not at home right now. You're working, you're painting. Thanks for taking the time with us. I wanted to ask you, and I think I already know the answer, but I want to ask anyway, do you have a favorite mural so far?
That's a big question. I have favorite pieces of many of them. Some of the ones that, you know, it was a total thrill to paint the Great Ape House at Smithsonian's National Zoo.
I read about that one and how you chose it, and that wasn't necessarily where they were going to put it at first.
Yeah, they gave me a choice of a bunch, but they were definite of locations, but they were definitely steering me down toward the farm and where the bees might be, where the beekeepers would be. There was a pollination playground down there. And I just walked up to the Great Ape House and I was like, oh, it's the Great Ape House, you know, bees in Italian. So and it was the correlation between the King Kong film, of this fear changing people's perception about something and ruling when it's so unnecessary at times. And so I did a giant swarm of the bees, like the Swarm, that film that was probably made around the same time as the original King Kong. And how are we letting fear steer us when knowledge and a real connection around something could change our perception of it and also our behavior in the world? You know, my work is often about looking at the bees and saying, what are they showing us? And how can I facilitate that through my art?
When I was reading up about you and I was looking at your website, it's so well done. Everything looks like it was planned from the beginning, you know, even the 50,000 bees that you want to eventually paint, and you said you're at 5,500 now. That conversation came from the gentleman you mentioned earlier in the show. And I interview a lot of people who are doing wonderful work in the world, including yourself. And you think it just came to them one day, and now suddenly this is their purpose, and they're living out that purpose without much conflict. And in reality, you know, when I look at your website and I see that it's so beautifully done, and the media attention you received is well deserved. It's an inspiration, I think, to people who are having those moments like you did with the bee, especially right now, having these moments with themselves about what their next move is and how to get there. And if there's someone watching who has something in mind, who's had an idea they haven't brought to fruition, what is your advice to them?
It's interesting because I just posted yesterday on Instagram because it was something I was thinking about. I think about if I'm on a kid's project, I'm at a children's museum right now painting, so I'm in the headspace of thinking about kids and how are they viewing this work. And a big part for me, because is actually being an example of someone who had this crazy idea. My dad, when I told him I was going to go from painting commission murals to like, no, I'm going to paint bees. He's like, what are you doing? You've got a career doing art, and now you're going to go into like bees? It's like niche on niche on niche. And I was like, but it needs to happen. It was just calling me toward it. And I think being an example of that is as important as what the work is, the actual piece is that I paint up there. Like being the guy who can actually have this crazy idea and then move slowly toward it and have it open up doors and have things happen that I could not even have possibly imagined. Like that's the energy I hope to inspire in young people, because so often they come with great ideas and they don't know how to do it because they're so busy trying to figure out how to do it. When if you just, that old metaphor of like, just go as far as the headlights can see. You don't know what's around the corner, but if you can get as far as the headlights, you're fine, and so that's really a big part of it for me. Telling that story with my life is just what it's become, because it has been harrowing. I have had days where I'm like, I cannot do this. Thank God for best friends, because I'm calling them up and they're like, you can do this, just breathe, and a path. Like, I do believe deeply that when we connect with a true purpose about something, it isn't going to be easy, because there's amazing things we learn from the pain of going through that, and there isn't another way to learn yet, that humans have experienced. Sometimes a little bit of pain really opens up that joy on the other side. And that's really been my experience with it. And it's always been okay every time. Like now I have to curate the projects. This is like scary and exhausting for me. At the beginning, it was like, does anybody want to be painted on their wall? And now it's like, I have all these great options. Which ones are the right ones to do? And how do I make those decisions?
That's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
Good problem to have, to sort through, if you want to call it a problem. It's good, good choices in front of you. I let you know that I am not at home recording because they're putting a pool in a couple doors up from my home, and it's all kinds of racket. So I reached out to my friend Jessica. She has a lovely home in a quiet place in our town. And so I'm in, excuse me, I'm in her daughter's room, Haley Fanlith, who is an incredible basketball player playing in Kentucky now at Louisville. And I told you this off air to explain, because you were saying you're on the road, and I said, well, I'm not in my normal space either. Tell us your WNBA story that connects to this lovely young lady back there,
right?
Team USA, who will eventually, no doubt, play for the WNBA herself.
Awesome. I was the muralist for the Washington Wizards, the NBA team, for almost 10 years. I did community outreach pieces, and in that time period, the WNBA came into being, and so they had this whole new team at the arena in DC, and I was telling you that, like, when I did work in the locker rooms and some outreach PR stuff in mural form and everything for the WNBA, but I just remember being around those women, like, and they were just lit up with joy. It was just like, I would go from, God love them, the NBA players were slightly entitled, possibly. I don't know. They weren't really thinking about the guy painting murals, but these women were like, thank you for painting our locker room. We're so excited. They were just I just remember that so clearly. It was a really great time period,
What a great story. Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time. I'm so excited to finally been able to chat with you, and I will be on tour, ideally, hopefully, next year, spring or summer again, and maybe our paths will cross at that point. I'll be going from St. Louis to Boston.
Oh, cool.
11 or 12 cities along the way, so maybe you'll be close by.
Yeah.
But thank you again for your time. The website again is The Good of the Hive. I'm talking with Matt Willey. Take a look at the murals and just the purpose of his vision. It's really incredible. Thank you again.
We have implemented and exceeded the state and federal best practices in sanitation to keep our community safe. Clients are COVID health screened prior to arrival, and our staff and clients wear masks at all times. We have created extra physical distancing space, including private suites for hair coloring services. Element Salon and Spa is committed to providing the highest level of service while enjoying a safe and relaxing experience.